Coming up on A Courageous Heart.
I just decided, well, maybe I would just start cutting. I'd never really heard of it before, maybe once or twice, but I didn't know that people, why they did it or what it really was. And then I just picked up my knife and I sat there for a while just kind of thinking, just trying to figure out what was going on in my head, until finally I just made the decision to go ahead and try it.
A Courageous Heart with Karen Dye.
Hello and welcome to A Courageous Heart. I'm Karen Dye. It is a beautiful day here, and for those of us who love the Lord and who have given Him our hearts, we see the beauty all around us. We even see it inside of us because that is where He lives. But for many of us, the darkness is just far too deep and too heavy, and we look for ways to try and find relief. The story we're about to share with you today is about a young woman I met about a year ago. What I saw then was a very angry, fearful, and hurt young woman. But what I see today, after an encounter with Jesus Christ, is a woman who has overcome an addiction to cutting, is now living purposefully and joyfully for the Lord, and she's going to share her amazing testimony with us today because of her courageous heart. We're here today with a friend of mine I met about a year and a half ago, and her name is Sarah Hart. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Sarah, I want to start off today by reading to you something that you wrote in your journal a while back. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, you kept a journal, and I wanted to share an excerpt from your journal with our viewers, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the entry. It says, "I really hope that I'm able to fix my issues. I really hope that I find true happiness. When I lift up my shirt sleeve and see the big pink scars, I feel so weird. I think about how when I swim again, everybody's going to see them. That kind of upsets me, but still I'm not willing to use the scar cream. They're a part of me, and hopefully I can get to the point where I'm not ashamed anymore. I think I might have a pride there. Everyone seems to see me in a respectable light, like I'm the good girl who would never do this to herself. I'm the deep, wise girl, and I have it all together. Maybe they don't really see me that way, but I feel like they do. And if they knew my problem, I feel like I would be letting them down. I'd become someone they never imagined me to be." What was going on when you wrote that entry? Tell me where you were at in this journey of addiction to self-harm and cutting.
During the time I wrote that, I was still trying to figure out who I was exactly and if I could live with the knowledge of knowing that I had been a cutter for 5 years of my life, and just how people would relate to me once they knew, because I wanted them to know, but I was still scared that they would judge me wrongly. And cutting is something that if you don't understand the whole picture, you just make assumptions and you don't really ever understand what that person's going through. And cutting has been one of the most misunderstood addictions because there just aren't that many people that have ever really went through that.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, tell me, when did you first cut yourself? Take me back to that very first day when you did it. Tell me what was going on that day. How did you learn about it, and what did that feel like?
I started cutting just shortly after my 14th birthday. I don't specifically remember what was going on at that time. I do know that I was sitting on my bed, and probably a fight had just happened because there were a lot of fights going on. And I remember just sitting on my bed, kind of curling myself up in a ball and just thinking, how was I going to get through this? Because nothing was working. I didn't really have a lot of friends, and I didn't have anyone I could go to. And I just decided, well, maybe I would just start cutting. I'd never really heard of it before, maybe once or twice, but I didn't know that people, why they did it or what it really was. And then I just picked up my knife and I sat there for a while just kind of thinking, just trying to figure out what was going on in my head, until finally I just made the decision to go ahead and try it. And I was shocked by what happened. I didn't expect very much from it, but somehow I felt like I had a new way to control everything that was going on. I now had this secret that no one else would know. They could control me they could yell at me or ground me or do anything that they wanted to, but they didn't know about this, and this thing was completely mine and mine alone.
So Sarah, you talk about there was a lot of fighting going on. Are you talking about within your home? Was there conflict between your parents and you, between you and your parents? What kind of fighting was going on that was causing you to be so uneasy?
There was a lot of fighting in the house. There was a lot of verbal abuse, and there was physical abuse as well. Most of the fighting was between my mom and my sister, and it would just range from all kinds of stuff, from just really small things to just both of them threatening that they were going to kill themselves or walk out or leave. And numerous times my mom would say that she wasn't going to come back, and so when she would leave, we wouldn't know if she was okay or if she was dead or what was going on. We didn't know if she's coming back. And then with my dad, he would fight, but he also withdrew a lot, and so he kind of disappeared into his own little realm that no one could reach him at. And with Rachel, it was constant fighting, and it was, even if everyone else had stopped fighting, she would still be screaming. She'd go into her room and shut her door and still be yelling at you. So it was just a lot of verbal abuse.
Just a lot of friction going on within the household, and it sounds like maybe there was some difficulty in finding a way to positively communicate within the family. And I think sometimes we as parents fall short because we don't understand that the words we say begin to shape who our children are. And because your parents are your lifeline and your security, when a parent says something like, "I'm going to leave and I'm never coming back," of course that's said out of anger, but as a child, you're frightened and you're scared. So what happened? You said you felt like you could control the situation now. It was something that was just yours. Was there any sort of physical release or feeling of euphoria, or cutting, they describe it as an addiction. So if you're taking a drug or if you're drinking, there's some sort of after effect that calms the person down. Was there anything like that with cutting?
It just really depended on the situation, and like most addictions, you would think it would be stronger in the beginning than it was later. But the euphoria came later in the addiction, and at the beginning it was really more of a control thing. There was a release. Like when you did cut, you felt just like everything just kind of poured out of you, but just minutes after it was gone. It's not a long-term release. It doesn't help you for very long.
So Sarah, when you cut and you said you felt a release, almost like it was pouring out, does that come from seeing the blood come forth when you cut yourself? Is that where that feeling of release? It was just interesting to me, the choice of words that you chose, pouring out. Is that got something to do with seeing that?
In a way, it does have to do with seeing the blood. You feel like you're just watching yourself, the pain just pour out of you. You're watching it, everything just disappear. And so while I was cutting is when I felt the highest, because you're making that mark and you're feeling the pain, something that you never can feel because you're just completely numbed by everything else. And so finally you feel alive, and I think that's where a lot of the high comes from, is just feeling and not being so numb.
So you have the experience of realizing that you're able to feel, you see the blood coming out, so that is somewhat soothing to you. After it's all done though, you said for you it was a good feeling as you were cutting. After it was all done, how did you feel then? Was there any shame or guilt or sorrow that you had done this to yourself?
At first there wasn't any shame or guilt because I didn't have any reason to feel guilty. I didn't have anyone to hold me accountable or anyone that knew. And I wasn't trying to get better, so I was just going on it. But after I would cut, I went into like a sort of isolation. I didn't want anyone to talk to me or see me or just be around me at all, because you kind of disappear in a way into your own little deep world. And so I just was really isolated during those times.
How old were you when you first started?
14.
14 years old. So where did you cut? How did you hide it?
I would cut on my arm. That was my favorite place, which sounds sick in a twisted way. But if you cut on your arm, you can wear long sleeves, which makes it easy to hide, especially in the winter. And if people rub up against you or grab you on the arm, I sort of got a joy from that because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know who this person was behind the long sleeves.
So how did you get found out, Sarah? Who discovered? Did you tell, or was it somebody found out on accident?
I was actually found out, which was really devastating for me. I had left a journal out in the living room the night before, and when I woke up, I went into the bathroom, and I was just getting ready for school like I normally do, and my mom comes in, and she kind of starts getting ready too, but there was some tension. I wasn't really sure what was going on, and I just assumed that I was just making it up myself. And shortly into that time of getting ready, she looks over at me and she asked me if she can see my arm. And I totally freaked out. I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, can you see my arm? And she's like, can I see your arm? And so I tried to run away because I knew what she was talking about by then. And when I tried to get out, she grabbed me and was holding me down and trying to pull up my sleeve so she could see. And it wasn't that hard because I didn't really have like very long sleeves on. And then I almost made it out of the bathroom, and my dad came in, and he stood at the door and was trying to keep me in as well. But I had a closer relationship with my dad, so I kind of just ran to him and clung to him because I didn't want to have anything to do with my mom. So it was completely an accident that they found out.
You know, Sarah, being a parent myself of 5 children, and one of them being addicted to drugs and alcohol, I remember the day that I found out about his addiction, and I had no point of reference. It was not something that I had experimented with as a child, and all I knew was that I was so afraid for my child. But out of that fear, many times comes anger, and I don't know what to do. And for us, we ended up just insisting that he would go into treatment and he would go into counseling. And I think we were very naive that we did that, and he agreed to go because it was either do this or, you know, you're grounded or whatever the situation is, we won't leave you alone. But that wasn't really the best answer. I think we dropped him off at the counseling office thinking that we were going to go back and pick him up and it was all going to be okay. Was that a similar situation for you? Did you immediately get told you were going to go to counseling, and did your parents, were they naive? Because I can only imagine, I mean, we hear a lot more about drugs and alcohol, but when it comes to cutting, I don't know that adults and parents really have a firm grasp of what this is. So is that similar what happened to you?
Yeah, it's really similar. I didn't know, they didn't tell me you're going to go to counseling, but I went to school and they called the office and had someone come pick me up, and we went to counseling. And I was really, really upset, obviously, because I was being forced to fix something I didn't think needed fixed. And so they put me into counseling, and it didn't work because you can't just, if someone's not ready to get help, you can't put them into counseling and think that they're going to come out of it. And I think my parents probably felt similar to how you did. You just want someone else to fix the problem because you don't know what to do, and you don't realize how big of a problem it is. You know that there's a problem, but you just can't fathom it.
I think so many times, Sarah, that parents, we put our kids into counseling, but we don't understand that we're part of the issue. We're part of the problem. I know that was the case for us. We found that a lot of the things we were doing within the home were actually contributing toward his pain, and that we needed to have counseling as a family. We needed to go and work on these things. What was your relationship like with the Lord at this time? Did your family go to church? Did you have a personal relationship with Jesus at this time, or were you non-believers?
We were a Christian family, but I had been spoon-fed Christianity my whole life, so I believed because everyone around me believed. It had nothing to do with if I actually really had a relationship with God. And I didn't even know you could have such a deep relationship with him. I just thought he was just some God up there who kind of watched over you. And my family, we were really the checklist Christians. Go to church, check it off. Pray, check it off. It wasn't anything really deep. It was a very superficial relationship.
Sarah, I think a lot of times there are people who are checklist Christians. I know that I was for a long time. Go to church, check, pray, check, and God is just kind of one of those beings that's out there, and yeah, sometimes he's good to us, but most of the time he's angry with us, and so he's not really involved in our day-to-day relationships. Tell me what the turning point was for you. Tell me, because here you are now, an adult young woman. This started when you were 14, I'm guessing maybe 5 years ago or so. Tell me what the turning point was, because I don't see fresh wounds today. So I want to know what the turning point where you thought, I am valuable and I don't want to do this to myself anymore.
It took a really long time to reach that point, and honestly I didn't think I would ever reach that point. I was ready to just completely give up. But as I started college, I met Macy, and she was the first person that really showed me what it meant to be loved. But after a few months, it became too big of a problem for her, and she had to give up. She just didn't know what else to do. And then I became really close friends with one of my professors, Mike Christel, and he really started just pouring out love on me and just showing me what it meant to be worthy and to mean something. And it was an amazing experience because my dad, he was there, but he was never like a strong encourager or a strong Christian at that time. And I'd never realized how much I needed male attention until I was getting it. And so Mike would continuously help me. He'd tell me I was worthy and I was beautiful. And I didn't understand. I was like, how can you even think that about me? Like, do you not see what I'm doing? And he would just keep telling me what was true. And then eventually he went through some hard things himself and he couldn't be there. And just instantly God had someone else in my life ready to help me. And Ashley is really where I really started getting it. And she just is absolutely amazing. She would just stay up all night with me, texting me or just talking to me. And she really taught me a lot about what it means to be a Christian and what it means to trust God, and that you have to be willing to go through all of that pain and just experience it and know that God is bigger than whatever you're going through. And even if you feel like cutting, you have to give that over because it's not yours. And that's something I always thought was, well, this is mine. And she really taught me to understand that it's not mine. It never was. It was always Satan's. And God he doesn't give you things like that. And after a while, I started kind of understanding, and it started clicking, and I started praying more and just developing a deeper relationship with God. But I didn't actually decide that I wanted to get better completely, because you can decide you want to get better but not just kind of go half-heartedly into it. Mm-hmm. But around March of this year, I finally decided that I was going to get better no matter what it took.
You know, one of the things that you just said I think is so key, and that is that cutting was never yours. It was the enemy, and that Satan had a plan to destroy you, and he didn't ever want you to understand what God's purpose and plan was for your life. What's your relationship like? Well, let me say this. Are you cutting today?
No.
Is the desire to cut when things get stressful, is the desire still there, and do you have to make a choice not to?
I think that the desire might always be there because I've learned to use that as a crutch for most of my life. But now it's more of just I have the strength to get through it because I'm not relying on just myself anymore. I have God's strength too. And I've learned a lot. And whenever that comes on to me, it was just a month ago even, I would start thinking about it would be so much easier to just, go back to that and stop doing everything that I'm doing. But then I started thinking about how Satan really does do that. He takes something that's absolutely horrendous and makes you think that it's wonderful. And that happens in everything in today's society, whether it's just money or clothes or anything. He makes you think that those things that are just not as good as they seem are really great.
Sarah, when I met you a little over a year ago, it was a chance meeting. We happened to be at a concert together, and your family wanted me to meet you, introduced us, and it really was just, you were going to be going to the same school that my son attended. And what I saw a year ago was a very frightened and very angry young lady. And for me to be sitting here today with someone that I see is beautiful and confident and has found her place in God's kingdom, I would like for you to describe to me and to our viewers, who is Sarah Hart today, after personally meeting Jesus Christ in the darkness and having him reach down and pull you out of that pit? Who do you see yourself as today?
Today I feel like a completely different person. I feel joyful inside and like I have a reason to make it to the next day. And I have things that I'm looking forward to. Moving to Phoenix and just getting to be with people that I really love. And I never was able to really love people before, and now it's just a completely new experience. And just things have changed so much. And instead of thinking, oh, I'm never going to make it to that next day, or even just trying to make it through the night, now I'm looking forward and planning for just a really bright future and just helping other people that have gone through a lot, the same stuff that I went through.
There are a lot of people watching this today, Sarah. Some of them have tuned in and your story has caught their attention. Some of them are young people who are thinking about cutting. They've heard about it, and if it worked for others, maybe it would work for them. There are parents who I know are sitting there right now with tears rolling down their cheeks because they just don't know what to do for their child. I'd like for you to take a minute and just speak directly from your heart to our viewers and tell them, what would you tell them if you're considering it, and what you would tell a parent who has a child that they need to know?
If you are considering it, you should first realize that it may seem like it's the right answer or that it could help you. And it did seem like it was helping me for a really long time. But at the end, you have to face it, and you realize, wow, this isn't where I want to be. I didn't even know I was going to get addicted to this. You just start doing it as some kind of way to cope, but before long, you're losing control, and you don't have control. It completely controls you. And instead of getting better, you just hate yourself, and you get worse. So if you're thinking that it's going to help you, you have to understand that in the end, you're just going to be someone you really hate and someone you can't stand. And for parents, there's no perfect answer and there's no perfect solution. And sometimes the only thing you can do is just be there for them and let them know that they can come to you and that they can talk to you. And one thing that's really important that they need to know is that you're safe, that you're not going to go out and just tell everyone what they're going through.
You know, it's hard to imagine when you're in a beautiful setting like this that there is pain in the world, that there is conflict. And if we don't learn of healthier ways to deal with that conflict, it can destroy us. You know, the Bible tells us that there's an enemy out there who does nothing but sneak around and try and destroy us and bring us that pain. He tries to steal the very purpose and the very joy that Jesus died on the cross to give us. But the Bible also tells us that God sent His only Son to die on that cross so that we would have someone here with us every single day, a comforter known as the Holy Spirit. I believe there's spiritual warfare going on all the time. Whether you believe it or not is up to you, but for me it doesn't make it any less true. The Bible says it, I believe it, and I've seen it work in my life and in the life of lots of people like Sarah. The interesting thing is we learn to deal with our pain in different ways, in destructive ways, and I love what Sarah said. She said she thought cutting and that addiction belonged solely to her. It was something that only she knew about, and it belonged to her. But a very godly woman shared with her, no, Sarah, that tool is of the devil, and he's using it to destroy you. And Sarah went on to say that a lot of times things that we think are bringing us comfort, the devil perverts them, and they end up only bringing us more pain. I learned a lot about the addiction of cutting. I learned that 2 to 3 million people in the United States alone suffer with some form of self-harm behavior. But the good news is that there is hope, and there is hope in Jesus Christ. If you or someone you know is struggling with the cutting or other forms of self-injury, Focus on the Family has developed a nationwide Christian counseling referral system, and I would encourage you to call the number on your screen and talk to one of the counselors who are there and ready to help. Sarah wanted to stop. She knew what she was doing was destroying her. So she got honest with herself and with those who cared about her, and she got serious about her relationship with Jesus Christ. She allowed Him access to the darkest places in her heart, and He showed her a better way. What the enemy meant for Sarah's destruction, the Lord has now turned around for her good, and she now shares her story with others and tells them that victory in overcoming any addiction starts by crying out to God. Today, Sarah is a new creation in Christ, and she is a beautiful young woman with a light inside of her that has overcome the darkness. It's no longer a razor that she reaches for, it is her Savior. Do the scars of cutting lines remain on Sarah's arms? Yes. But Sarah has learned to read between the lines and accept that she is truly loved. And that takes a courageous heart.
If you would like a DVD copy of today's program, you may order one through our website, www.courageousheart.org. The preceding program was made possible in part by the following ministry partners: Mike Kehoe Ford, and Meyer Electric Incorporated. If you would like to be a partner of A Courageous Heart or make a one-time donation, please contact us through A Courageous Heart at www.acourageousheart.org. A Courageous Heart is a viewer-supported ministry.